ladies and gentlemen. It's a chess show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today our guests are Professor Ken Regan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on again.
Always great to have you. And Jim Eid from Eid Foundation. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you, Sasha. Great to be here.
Great to have you. So, Ken, we haven't seen you for a little bit longer than we would like.
I've been traveling.
I know.
Successfully.
We all have to travel from time to time. And what, in your opinion, is the most significant news in the last couple of weeks? And what are you following these days?
Well, absolutely the start of the Global Chess League.
Yes.
So that's with sponsorship from India, and it's an initiative, and it's actually quite amazing to see the FIDE vice president playing. I mean, we've had world champions be FIDE president, but now we have former world champion Anand as FIDE vice president, leading his burgeoning his team. It's not by country completely, but certainly. And he's played two interesting and notable games already. And so this is the main news. There was a European pairs championship. And what's the most interesting when you put the two of them together is that chess is experimenting with new formats in the classical game. Well, this is rapid, actually. Wait a second. This is rapid. But chess is experimenting with new competition formats. Team play, pairs play is a new concept. So.
But Ken, I would like to ask you, what's in principle is the creation of the teams, because normally we are accustomed to national teams like in Olympiads or so on. There could be even corporate team, let's say a big company like IBM or Charles Schwab or some other company could put fairly strong team if they have some maybe even grandmasters on their staff and some notable strong players. But in this particular situation, what was the governing concern about how to form the teams? How was it done? On what principles?
I may leave some of these questions to Jim, but let me just read off the names of the teams. They are the Balan Alaskan Knights, the Chingari Gulf Titans, the Ganges Grandmasters, the Alpine Warriors. This is counting Norway as Alpine too, because Carlsen leads the team. The Triveni Continental Kings, and the Upgrad Mumba Masters. So two of them at least can be traced to India in the name. But you might as well ask the same questions. Our sports leagues in North America have a geographical anchor, but they have, and with the EPL, with soccer leagues in Europe as well, but they have players from various nations on them. So anyway, okay, I'll let James say some things.
Okay.
Well, yeah, thanks, Ken. It depends on which team Messi's on who I'm following. But I think the organizer, and I always like to give credit to the people that have put this on. Tech Mahindra, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, it is a tech company in India.
Right.
Is that the correct pronunciation?
That's the correct Mahindra. Yep.
Okay, and so they are forming it, and they're behind it all. But there's also individual sponsors. Like each team has an icon, and so I was contacted to sponsor, like just they're wearing a patch on their sleeves, and you could buy that. And so they're innovating in ways that I really admire. I'm really curious to see if it's successful, because depending on what kind of sponsorships that they can get will tell us how long this can go on. The other interesting thing about the format, which is we don't have any team competitions where men and women are both on the same team.
And junior.
And junior, so it's like you can form any team you want if you get the sponsorship to support it. And
Yep.
so Irina Krush is playing on the same team as Magnus Carlsen. And, you could go on and on. And also the scoring system is different. If you win with black, you get 4 points. If you win with white, you get 3 points. So all of these innovations, I really, Carlsen seems to be involved somehow with the different formats that we were experiencing, the classical rapid and blitz kind of staggered formats and all of these types of things. And it's like, are we going to generate interest? Are we going to generate eyeballs? Because basically what it comes down to is sponsorship wants to know who's going to watch, because then they're going to be able to sell product or sell services or sell something if they generate a large enough audience. We don't know that yet, but they're taking risks to see. And we know that the old way of doing it was to have a world champion at the end of a process. And we have found that if the strongest player in the world doesn't play in that world championship, it's not so interesting, doesn't generate as much attention, and lacks the sponsorship. So there's another way to pursue it. And we've seen this. I know in San Francisco, they had a San Francisco-based sponsor for one of the Grand Prix tournament sites. And, even though it was a combination of in-person and remote play, which we never experienced 10 years ago, we never saw anything like that. So this is another example of innovation, and I'm really curious. I'm really excited about it, but I'm not sure if I like it or not. But
we'll see. Well, we might judge by the quality of the games.
Yeah.
And I guess besides watching audience, press coverage will also say some things.
Right. Right.
Is there any interesting games being played so far?
Yes, I can present 2 interesting games played by the FIDE vice president, Anna.
I can't stand it.
I would actually, maybe you could I should say I shortchanged myself, because the previous FIDE vice president was a world championship contender. That's Nigel Short.
Yes.
Correct.
And I should say that a match between Nigel Short and Anand, I think, would attract a lot of interest. Okay, whoops, window. Okay, let's see. Wait, oh, I see. Okay, so whoops. You know what? I'm going to do my entire screen again. Okay, so there, some things confusing. Okay, so I have the games teed up. So in the first round, Anand played Jan Krzysztof Duda, who is Poland's icon. So each team is an icon on board 1. I was going to say, too, I do credit the online Olympiads that were played during the pandemic with pioneering a format where you had to have different categories of player on the same team, including 2 women and 2. I think, 2 women, 1 junior woman. I forget exactly how it was, but this is continuing much of the same thing. So Anand is white, and recently, a new way of handling the Berlin defense has become more popular. And this way involves an early exchange on C6, leading to positions that are structurally similar, but without white playing D4, to positions in the exchange Ruy Lopez. And this is an interesting game, I think, to illustrate this strategy, because if you go over the game with an engine, you'll see that black was equal for much of the game. But I think that the game has more potential for black to go wrong than white to go wrong, certainly the way it unfolds. And the other riddle of the game is, why should white have a privilege of getting an attack on the king side in a position such as this? Which is highly symmetrical, and there's no Bobby Fischer bishop, no white squared bishop in this position. So what is it that creates an attack on the king side? Okay, white castles first. If white took the black e-pawn, then after the trade of knights, black would have a double attack involving f2 and would win back the pawn with advantage. Now black has to guard the pawn. And so the structure... So black has the 2 bishops, but the 2 bishops are not really a factor in this position because there are a lot of strong squares that are impeding their access. And white is able to make strong squares out of both c4 and e4. and f5 we mentioned also in this position. So here we go.
That's a very important point you're making, Ken. With the locked position in the center, the pawns on e4 and e5, the two bishops don't have the range that they might otherwise have.
Right.
So it's an important point to point out, because the criticism of the bishop taking the knight on c6 is that you're giving up the two bishops.
Right.
But as you point out.
But white's knights look very good, and in fact, black is about to give up one of his bishops for white's knight, right here. To this, and this cuts down the dominance of white's knight. What it also does is it frees up black to gain mobility with the pawn. So the other thing that's strategically interesting about the game is that black achieves a total dream move, and yet and equalizes according to the engine, but maybe doesn't equalize according to playability of the game. So here we go. So now white is making c4 a strong square. The c4 and c5, but really c4, is a block square for black's double pawns. If you can render those double pawns immobile, then you tamp down a lot of the play in black's position. And
very important point.
Yep. So black seems to invade. Now, black, by the way, is going to put pressure on the d file. So another question in this position is whether black's play on the d file is into empty air or not. Okay, so here we go. So now white just strengthening the strong square on e4, and setting up the possibility of advancing one of the two pawns on the right-hand side. So this is the positional question I want to pose. What about this position makes it more feasible for white to attack on the king side than black? Because by all appearances, this is completely symmetrical. Both knights have access to the f5, f4 square. White's knight on e3 is a little bit more involved in other parts of the game, but that's similar. Black's bishop on e6 looks like it's optimal square to aid any pawn advances. It's not clear what white's bishop on b2 is doing. The pawns on the king side are completely symmetrical. Black has
just pick it up. Well, Ken is.
But then what ought to be the most optically telling part of this position is that black's rooks are active and white's rooks are not. White's rooks are just dopey at the moment. So black's rooks can potentially go to d7 and e7 and get on to g7 and h7 behind a storm of the pawns. Nevertheless, the engine says white has a little nagging semi-plus. So what is it about this position that makes it more difficult to play for black? Now here, black opts for the queenside counterplay.
Can we talk a little bit about the question you just asked? Because, it's the interesting point to me is that you can see from the pawn structure on white's point, all the pawns are on the white squares.
Right.
Which is kind of dulling the otherwise looks great bishop on e6.
Yeah.
Does it have any prospects? Not unless
it bites on granite. Yes.
Yeah, and as does the bishop on b2, because it hits the e5 square, which is so well protected. It has no prospect on that diagonal. It doesn't look like. So I don't think either one of those pieces is well placed. Both knights are pretty well placed for an attack on the king side.
Right.
The rooks could get in. As you said, by lifting to the 7th rank or the 2nd rank and then over, or they could, if the queen gets off the back rank for white, suddenly they could enter the game by just going over to g1 and f1, and then the pawn advances. So both could happen, but as you were pointing out, and it looks like the next move shows, the pawns on the queen side are immobile, so the action does seem to be, if there's going to be action, it's going to be on the king side.
Right.
And I don't know if there's any edge here. It has to be very slight.
Yeah. And it's a question of strategy. Now, black plays the classic queen size strategy, beginning with the next move, then the next move for black, c5 or b5, those are the choices of the engine. Although rook d7, which is a move I would strongly consider here,
Right.
is the third choice. But at any rate, yeah, it's a real mystery of strategy. And by the way, worth saying in advance, the game is going to be decided by a breakthrough on e5, a square that black is defending 3, and if you count this rook, 4 times over.
Right.
So it's a question of what magic is white able to bring about. Well, so black begins the counterattack. b5 is a committal move. Black can back it up though, because you can defend the b5 square twice. So this is not likely to cause a fixed weakness on c4, so that's fine.
Is G3 is designed to cut the knight off from f4, right?
Right.
It's
significant to say black's knight on g6 is in the way of both g6 and g5 by black.
Right. And it might be helping h4, h5. It
right.
might be helping white.
As we will see. So now white starts lifting rooks. So suddenly in the course of 3 moves, white's rooks look a lot more active, while black is taking aim to make the queenside counterplay, and there it goes. But now white is going to be able to scoot the pawn really quickly. And it's possible that black miscalculated here. The engine wants back to play knight e7 to get the knight so that white's out of the way. And maybe that's important to keep the option of responding to h5 with h6. In fact, that briefly was the best move by the engine. Now, however, the engine is saying black should go ahead with counterplay. So at least those ideas are in the air.
Right.
But instead, black went for the counterplay right away. Now, normally when I see this move by black, I think black has equalized. And to a large extent, that's justified. Okay, so now black takes over the c5 square.
Wow.
And white actually retreats the rooks. This is very curious. This is why
I can't follow or can't explain this.
Well, one thing about this is, I don't know whether it's directed against opposing the d file. So one effect of black c4 is that
perhaps
d file.
Yeah.
Okay, but bishop c3 is able to attack the
d-file. Right.
We have to go into variations. Maybe there was some reason the rook was going to be loose on f2.
Okay.
Now black counterattacks. Black looks fine here, but the engine says definite little advantage to white. Okay, now white gets this 2-step on the knight.
Right.
And now the funny thing is, look, all of black's defenders on e5 have gone elsewhere. Suddenly, black's pawn chain is being pried open.
At the base, it's attacking at the base of the pawn chain, which will weaken it. It's classic, and it's such a dramatic change from e5 looked like impregnable.
Yeah.
And now it's starting to look a little loose. Yeah.
Yes, it's loose. And what the engine says, though, is that black should have just done his thing and gone c8 and b6 and c4 with the knight. Recapture the pawn on c4, which white can't really defend.
Right.
And play a counterattack on that side. Instead, black went this way to the knight, coming in on d4, which seems to be
looks
the
attractive
way
to
stop the center. But now, the engine says that if white had played rook fb1, it would have been a significant edge, and I have no idea why. I'm not going to look. Now, black is once again equalized. So here again, here's black's play on the d file. And this is the point where, again, I say, okay, well, white has some little attack, but it's not being reinforced. White's rooks are not missing on the h and g files after all. So black ought to be completely fine here. So what goes wrong? Okay, well, white takes this, and now the engine says black should capture on c4. What more natural move is there? Said black invaded the 7th rank. You can't really argue with that.
It's hard to, yeah.
And interesting tactic here that perhaps in rapid chess neither player saw. White can play rook b8. And if black takes the queen, then white gets 2 queens for the rook. If not, white is able to capture on the d file and hold on to the d file. But anyway, white, however, just played queen f1, which keeps a little advantage. Okay, black captures. And now here is where black went on the slippery slope. So this, again, is a question. Black looks to be dominating in the center. White is a weak pawn. White's queen is rocked back on f1. White does have the knight coming in, possibly, but otherwise, where is white's attack? So why does white win this game in 4 more moves?
And the computer still thinks white has the little edge here?
No, it's saying that black actually could counterattack with h5.
Yeah, see this? Okay, because, why not?
No, why not? Open up more. Black's rooks are much better able to take over the files. Yeah, so h5. So maybe we won't ascribe so much mastery to Anand. The other thing that the engine says that black can do here is the spectacular f5.
Man, I never would have even considered that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Why can't white just take a pawn here? Okay, then bishop takes c4. Wait, what's going on here? Oh, the queen's going to come to h6 and give checkmate. That's the point of f5.
Right.
The queen's going to come here. Okay, so black actually had spectacular resources here, but what black did instead was start down the slippery slope of thinking the queen is going to patrol some dark squares, and then playing a move that seems like it's avoiding a check, but it's sticking the king into trouble and just allowing white a tempo to improve the queen. And now the disastrous pawn grab. So I don't know, maybe I have to, the clock says black at 13 seconds at this point. So maybe the fact that this is rapid chess reared its head. Here is white's breakthrough.
13 seconds, but is there an increment? So everything?
Yeah, there is a 10-second increment per move, and the clock's not showing it, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I have to download the game to see the actual move times.
Right.
But now white has broken through on e5.
Right.
Game lasts only 2 more moves. Black captured, and now white is giving checkmate. Well, so checkmate in 3 moves. Rook g7 check coming up. So anyway, Anand won the battle when it counted, probably all in the space of 1 minute.
And Duda is an excellent player in his own right. I mean, he's been in all these major competitions. So this is a very interesting, even though it's rapid play, that was pretty high quality.
Right. Yes.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Let's see, is that his rapid rating? Yeah. Oh, okay. It says rapid rating 2794. Okay. Well, so now, so now let's look at the other game, which is really a prototypical instance of Magnus Carlsen's mastery. Or do you want to pause for a little bit and talk about the other game?
Well, I would say that's an interesting opening. I guess opening, you can still have new ideas in the opening is one of my first thoughts.
Yeah.
And secondly, it's a high quality game. Anand is a former world champion. Yes, he's the current FIDE vice president, but I'll never not think of him as a former world champion.
Right.
And Duda is young and rising in strength. So there's a lot of good, strong players coming to the forefront. And the battle of the old guard versus those young players is always interesting to me. And Anand got the better of him. But as you pointed out, with h5 for black, that king could have gone the other way pretty easily.
Yes. Yeah, that's an amazing resource to see. And maybe it's harder to see those resources in rapid chess. I don't know.
Right.
But there was one tweet that was highly amusing after that game that said, "Anand is the future of Indian chess." Okay, well, it's a tribute to his keeping his game at a high level well into
Yes.
his 50s. Okay, so here we are, however, though, Anand against Carlsen, icon versus icon.
Really?
And this is, again, just Carlsen's ability to make hay out of very small advantages. And here, completely symmetrical position after
Whoa.
five
Now,
moves.
Queen D2 is a normal move in the symmetrical English.
No, it's fashion that I've seen. At least it's not the Bond cloud, but putting the queen in front of the bishop.
Right.
And I'm not sure I know. I have not been up enough. I know it's been played in similar positions. I don't know what its theoretical point is, except that the bishop goes to b2. So now
And it's protected. Yeah. Okay. I get it.
It probably was putting the queen on a good square without committing the dark squared bishop to a locale yet. Whereas black puts the bishop more conventionally on d7.
Right.
And now that is the one asymmetrical feature of the position. Okay. So black readies counterplay on the queen side, potential counterplay.
Which is the way you play it, right?
Yeah. So now, and now this is the other interesting part. You know, you might think a trade on f6 would be automatic, but actually white plays d4. And there's some real venom in this simply because the d6 square is now noticeably weak. And there's something about this structure too, where the knight on c6 sometimes is not really the way you want your pieces. The hedgehog defense puts the knight on d7, the bishop on b7, and the pieces are more easily able to support d6 than in this position. So, okay. So now d6, the weakness on d6 has been transferred to c5. And this is now almost a classic hanging pawn positions.
Yes.
So the real hanging pawns, well, first of all, there's c5 and d5 often.
Right.
But they would be completely hanging pawns if white's pawn on b3 were on d3. Okay. Here it's just the c5 pawn that is exposed on an open file, but it's really exposed. Black is not able to defend it. So white attacks it, and black decides that you can't defend it. In fact, the engine's already giving white more than a pawn advantage. And if black tries a normal move to defend it, well, that's it. You can't defend that pawn anymore because the knight on c6 is in the way of all black's other pieces, in the way of the rook on the c file, in the way of black's bishop, potentially having more prospects. So this...
I'd just like to point out that, you know, with the bishop on d7 and knight on c6, normally in those positions that are sound, the bishop is on e7. So it would be protecting the d6, c5 squares. But since it's being ketoed, then the pawns on the dark squares in the center are weak.
Right. And this too is very airy.
And the diagonal is white's, right?
Yeah. So black is in major trouble here. So black tries to trade off into an end game where black gets some counterplay for white's winning the pawn. Okay, so now so white's a clean pawn ahead.
Right.
But black's rooks are going to be able to do more with the open files in the next few moves than white. Okay, so a nice strong move to make love for the king and stake out some dark square claim.
Absolutely.
So here comes black's counterplay. Okay, whether it's attacking more than air is a different question. But white wins black's e pawn. That was part of this attack, and in return, black is going to be able to wreck white's pawn structure. But this is a position. Not only is white 2 pawns ahead, but white's knight has more perching places than black's bishop in this position. In fact, white's knight is going to be very solid just on f3, guarding everything. And black looks great with the rook on the 7th rank, but white passive rook is behind the pawn. So unless black is really able to blockade the pawn, like maybe if black could play rook to a3, moving the rook like a knight,
Right.
black would be okay in this position. Okay, so white's is in a perching position. Okay, so black got this position. So this is the question: is black okay? Is black going to be able to play bishop c4 and capture the pawn? Well, white has something to say about that. So just before black's bishop gets to c4, white makes air for the pawn. Now
why didn't black try rook c3?
Yeah, let's see.
Because black would be content with repeating the position. Oh, maybe just knight b4?
Knight b4, and already now white's pawn is going to start moving.
And it starts to march. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so black. So you're at a disadvantage blocking the pawn from the front, of course, in any rook endgame. So at this point here, now it's fairly clear this must be judged a technical win. I guess if black has any chance to hold, it's around here. So funny, the computer wants black to play g5, exchanging pawns on the king side. It may be a good idea. Instead, black tries to go about getting counterplay with the king first. But, you need to calculate these things concretely. So what didn't get calculated concretely is that white is on the march again. So let's see, how would g5, this is the study thing, how would g5 have stopped knight c4? Oh, no. So funny, the computer changes its mind a lot here. And now rook a4. And so we have to look hard. See, the computer thinks white is way ahead, and then, well, now it has white repeating moves, which is a quirk that is difficult to understand. Yeah, so it's curious. The eval starts high and then comes down. So I don't know. Maybe someone who really studies this position can get sufficient counterplay for black. Now, there might ultimately be a tactical reason why the actual move in the game fails. So rook a4, well, the engine just wants white to play knight b2 and repeat again. So this is rather silly. So knight d6 is the consequent move. And then, let's see. So actually, that's the point. So the point is that this is effective because black's f7 pawn is loose. So that...
Or is that a one rook ending? And I would say no, but that's just a guess. If bishop takes pawn.
Yeah, it could be. Let's see. Well, if bishop takes pawn, okay, the engine clearly... Oh, no, the engine wants white to play knight takes e4. Okay, so no, it is... The engine judges it is a clearly winning rook ending. Well, I stand corrected, therefore. I was thinking it was because of black's loose pawn. But...
it's interesting. That's another study position. I'm sure that it's in Levenfisch's example of rook endings, but that's so hard to defend. It's so hard to win.
Yeah. Well, this is a game between
fortress. No, the king can come all the way to b6, and no.
Yeah. Well, take it from here. This is a game between two world champions, and it may really be worth analyzing in a long magazine article of the kind we sometimes see, whether black is truly lost here and how to organize a defense. Alex Fishbein writes articles of this kind for the American Chess Magazine. So now white is definitely on top at this point, because you just have to see that black's attack, this is where I said about the knight coming in on f3, is just really cozy.
Right.
And okay. So black can try, the counterplay. Now, this is the point actually where Anand gave up. You have to imagine that black was going to do this. And now the engine is saying that black can't even afford to take this.
Right.
And now the thing is that black's rook.
There's no way to get back. Yeah.
No way to get back. Yep. So that's why Anand resigned.
Very interesting game. Yeah, it's great to watch the legends of chess are playing in different formats, different tournaments. And for sure, for next week, we are going to follow this tournament very much so. My wife is very excited about this format. I want to spend a little bit more time to look at what it is. But we'll discuss it same place, same time next week.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes through July 2. It'll overlap Wimbledon and the Ashes Test Series.
Oh my God! But we'll find a way out. Okay.
Right.
That's will be torn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much
All
for
right, thank
this
you,
program, and have a great and successful week.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.